course, welcome back to the YOUT TURNT show right here on GBKM FM. Of course, I am your host, Romain Redman. And for those who are just joining, if you're first time joining the YOUT TURNT show, of course, welcome. If you've been here with us from the very beginning or joined along the way, of course, welcome back to the YOUT TURNT show. Of course, we air from 3 p.m. until 4 p.m. this and every Saturday right here on GBKM FM. And don't forget our platforms to get us on are right here on Facebook at Great Bending Kingdom Media. You can also check us out on YouTube. It's GBKM TV. Also get us on our website, www.gbkm.fm. You can also get us on TuneIn app. It's GBKM. And don't forget to get our app from our website and take us with you wherever you go in the world. And of course, as we always do it on the YOUT TURNT show, we bring you those hard-hitting discussions. We bring you fun, but of course, right now it's time to have those discussions. And from the topic that you're seeing today, it's definitely gonna be one of those days. But of course, the YOUT TURNT show is brought to you by the kind sponsorship of our lovely partners, AOF Immigration Canada, who specializes in all your immigration needs, ranging from the Quebec Investor Program, permanent residency, student visa, whatever your needs may be, they have you covered. So just give them a call. You can call them at 416-629-4617. You can also send them an email. It's at info@aofimmigration.com. You can also visit their offices. That's if you're in Canada, of course. It's 5800 Ambler Drive in Mississauga, Ontario, and just let them know that we sent you. We sent you, and they promise to take very good care of you. But of course, so much more to come after our first break, but we'll be right back. Stay tuned.
As the world fights this coronavirus, we are standing together as a family.
My name is Kevin. I'm a fan of GBKM.
My name is Pastor Clement Omozane.
I'm Medea, your red carpet host.
I am your host, Ellen Roxon, for the show Talk That Talk here on GBKM FM.
I'm a mother and a teacher. I stand with everyone at this time.
And my name is OJ Ebobo, co-host of the King's Domain.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Beloidy, the host of the Chat Up Show on GBKM.
My name is Kenny Bazwai, President and CEO, GBKM FM and TV. We stand with all the community affected by this pandemic.
And of course, welcome back to the YOUT TURNT show right here on GBKM FM. And of course, you're locked into the hour from 3 p.m. until 4 p.m. as we bring you those hard-hitting discussions. And today's program, as we promised, definitely will pack some of those and really give some insights into what the topic is really about. But of course, while you do that, we encourage you to just join our conversation. Join our conversation. You can drop those comments, and in the meantime, just give us your input on what we are discussing. And of course, today we have in studios, we'll be discussing the NDP's take on ending police violence. It is a big issue, and it is a topical issue. But of course, what does it mean through the perspective and the lens of the New Democratic Party? And of course, we have a very special guest in studio here with us. So I'll break that down. It's MPP for Kitchener Centre, the critic for anti-racism for the official opposition, and of course, chair of the NDP Black Caucus, Dr. Laura May Lindo. Of course, Ms. Lindo, welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me.
And it's so lovely. We were just talking before I think this year you're the first person to have a reappearance on the YOUT TURNT show. So of course, a huge congratulations to you. But the topic is so needed, and your presence to help break that down for us is of course absolutely vital to the community. Ms. Linda, we're talking about the proposed document, and that is your party's 10-page proposal to end police violence, entitled Invest in Black, Indigenous and Racialized Lives, on Ontario NDP Commitment to Action. So many powerful words on just the cover of those 10 pages. And as we skip through and we really look into what this consists of, as I said to you earlier, it's quite comprehensive. And I say comprehensive in the sense that it's not hard to read. It's easy to comprehend by the common man, let me just put it that way. And of course, technicalities are not so present, but they're plain. But Ms. Lindo, the proposal though, give us the NDP's insight into What went into putting this 10-page proposal together?
So for the official opposition, a lot of the pieces are things that we had been on separately as issues had arisen. So the notion of investing in Black, Indigenous, racialized lives is something that's central to the work that the NDP does. But what was fascinating at this moment in history is that we have solidarity happening across the province. We also had a call not to continue to listen, not to the request of Black, Brown, and Indigenous people across the province, but to finally make recommendations that have always. When I think about what's on this document, I find myself thinking about the title up, whose recommendations were not included, the roots of. In that report at that point, history, we were looking at the rise of gun violence among youth, and authors of that report were saying to us, you've got to address the root causes of violence. And we're saying the same thing. We want the world around decrease violence, Black, Brown, and the police. You have to invest in community, and that also to understand, listen to what they say to feel safe, because every area deserves to feel safe.
Absolutely, and I read the introduction, or the preamble as I call it, and there's a clear mandate not only to the government there, but also to the police. And I'm just going to read what the mandate is, what I pick up as the mandate from this. It said, we can build a future where we spend less on armed response to crisis and failed approaches to community safety, and more money, resources, and energy are dedicated to health and well-being of our communities. Redirecting funds is what we pick up there. Spending less, armed responses, and of course, well-being of our community.
Mm-hmm.
Give us a glimpse into what that looks like going into the future, though.
So what people have been saying for many, many, I would argue, decades, is that in order to have healthy, safe community, you have to invest in what will make them safe. That's what they call the determinants of health. Make sure they have access to quality employment, make sure that they have access to quality education, health care, affordable health. If we work on that starting point, there will be less violence, crime. We've actually seen that in a number, and that's part of why it's often this call to address social determinants of health. Those are the and so mandate, calling it,
yes,
is a call to government to actually invest what Black, Indigenous need to be healthy.
yes.
And that would allow police or the whoever it is that ends up mandate to ensure people are safe to focus on that. Part of what we know, police calls are now increasing for and not what they are equipped to do. And so if you send armed people to address folks that are experiencing mental crises, you're bound to have a problem. You've sent the wrong tools in for a problem. And so what we're arguing is that you invest in the right so that you can see the issues rising, and then end up having safer and more secure communities. What communities they need?
Yes.
People are saying it that they are not able to do the mental health work that's now on their shoulders. But historically, governments have invested more money in policing for them to be forced to do mental health work.
Yes.
They don't want that. We want to approach the community care and what help. And when we call to 911, it should end up in our death.
Yes.
And so, consequently, what we have to do is redistribute funding. we've got to make sure that those core services are both available for, available for, especially when there's urgent need, and that they're also culturally responsive, so that mental health practitioners that understand how to de-escalate, that we have health service providers that understand the needs of Indigenous communities, Black communities, other racialized
Yes.
communities, because even de-escalation looks different for our communities than it is for other.
And wonderful that you said that too. But the thing is, before we can get there, there are things that have to be put in place first. And I think, and that's what I like about how this was structured. So the systematic part the systematic aspect of racism has to be dismantled. And I always said that, I always say that for us to get rid of systematic racism, we have to overhaul the systems that fosters this kind of behavior or mentality. And you broke the legislation the legislation here broke it into two aspects. So dismantling the status quo, and the status quo is really dismantling the culture around policing and the cultures that exist in society. In other words, a systematic aspect of
That's
it.
right.
And then you go to the second part, which is on page 4, and it's the intermediate actions which can be taken, and that is where the policies come in and governments come in and the communities called upon and all sectors and agencies in society is called upon to take actions to help dismantle the system. So we're going to start with the status quo as you have it on page 2. Changing the status quo, dismantling the toxic police culture. You gave us a 5-point breakdown as to how to do that. I want you to just run through those for us, and then we get to the technical parts.
So let me grab my notes.
Okay, get yours going. Get yours going.
What page are you on? Let me get on the same page. So when it comes to the status quo,
Yes.
part of what we're talking about, and I won't go through each individual points, but I'll give you an overview. We'll be here for many hours. Part of the status quo is that the police have become empowered to be that invest themselves, the ones that decide whether they're doing a good job or a bad job, which areas of our social world they should be in, for instance, being in school, police officers, schools to do what they call building, even community that makes me over police. And so we need to start to recognize that part of what perpetuates racism is allowing all control to remain in the hands of the people who are not listening to Black, Brown, and Indigenous. And so that's part of the repositioning of power. So if we listen to Black, Indigenous, racialized communities, then we have to make sure that we remove police from schools, that we focus their attention on what they are trained to do, which is not responding to mental health calls, that they are provided with the tools to do their job, not the tools to initiate war in community, which is part of why we talk about the amount of that's going to very terms, making sure that they have access to that, as opposed to taking the funding for that and putting that towards mental health services that these need. The idea of oversight is a big portion of that, which is where I started. We know that there's processes like the SIU, the Ontario Civilian Police Commission, the Office of Independent Police Review Director. These are supposed to be established as independent bodies that would oversee if something goes wrong in policing. That's where you would tell them of some kind of an issue. But what has happened over time is that police are part of the process. So you have police that are investigating themselves as opposed to getting investigators from the community, training them so that they are separate from the services, and they're to examine what has happened and try and figure out what's gone wrong. And we, as Black community members, have experienced a lot of wrong, right?
Yes.
So that's been a very big call. And I think that it's hugely important for us to recognize that this is happening over years and years. So it's become a norm in police services to be the ones that are the experts to look at what. But in any field, there are certain expertise that you have in it, but there's often an understanding that you're close to it to be the one to evaluate whether or not you're the right thing. If you're asked to look at your own behaviors without that sort of that distance, it's easier for you to rationalize why you did what you did, rather than look at it openly and say, wait a second, this is where it broke down. So for
And the
instance,
point right
mental
there,
health,
Ms. Lindo,
and
and
I
the point right
on-
there is we're talking about the culture which exists in the police of we protect our own at all costs. So I think the challenge that one would face there is that, and let's just start with it from this point. The police unions are very powerful. They're probably the most powerful unions that exist, I would say probably anywhere in the world outside of government. So in terms of dismantling that status quo, how do we proceed to doing that when the police seems to have more power even over our politicians or elected representatives?
Well, I think that that's why we talk about the need to have political will to do things different. At the end of the day, the government has the power to make a change to the system. And in fact, even though the left and the liberals had brought in some of the police reform legislation that they had brought in, what necessary as strong or as big a step the community did, it was a toward different. The conservative government chose to dismantle that and sort of pull us all backwards. So a lot of community is having to do the same kind of advocacy they had done years. And so I think that there has to be an understanding that we are of influence as members of government right now, and that we can choice to invest. And that's also why the language of this policy is so important, because we're not talking about hating on. We're talking about love to Black, Brown, and Indigenous people. And if we can just sort of stay focused, then I think there has to come a point where every, as individuals in the world, decide, you know what, you have to invest in them. And for me, position as a member of Parliament, I have to hold on, because that's part of my job, to keep pushing back to make sure we center the.
And I suspect because there's a common saying with the capitalists, wherever the money lies, that's where the power is.
Yes.
And right now, seeing that, just a point of information for viewers, the police control their budget. The legislature cannot overturn the budget as it is right now. They cannot decide how the money is spent. So part of the status quo, point 3, is the police budget being more accountable to the elected representatives or elected city councillors and council.
Yes, so currently I was actually surprised, found out at Waterloo, and I found out that there's a budget line for policing. It's explained of police, but it's not broken for people to be able to decide how they might change it. And so no control, they vote yes for it, against it, but they don't have control over what is what. There's no accountability to know which initiatives are working and aren't. It's why you're seeing simultaneously to the calls that they fund and different areas, different around that. You're seeing questions raised about how much money is going in police, and people don't, because that part of the budget been made public. So if we had that information, we would better aid best, which is part of one of the asks that we do in the policy, is to provide that power to municipal council so that they can do the investment. They're the ones in the community. And to be, when something goes awry, we call a counselor to come in. And now we're hearing city councilors say, our hands, we can't do anything. And so they're turning to the province to help. And this is where bold action of the province is important. If we want to invest in lives, then we have to put these legislation in place. We make these amendments when it comes to the act, what we need to change there, and the power. The question is, does the government have the political, the opposition, community wants us to have that political, and we're waiting for the government to join us in the call to invest in Black, brown, and Indigenous lives.
Absolutely. Does the government has the political will? And of course, on that note, we'll take a very second break here on the You Turned Up Show, but we'll be right back after these messages with this and so much more. Just keep joining the conversation and sharing. Tell your friends to come in and join. Let's hear what they too have to say on this issue. Don't go anywhere. We'll soon be back.
As the world fights this coronavirus, we are standing together as a family.
My name is Kelly. I'm a fan of GBKF.
My name is Pastor Clement Omozane.
I'm Medea, your red carpet host.
I am your host, Ellen Roxon, for the show Talk That Talk here on GBKN FM.
I'm a mother and a teacher. I stand with everyone at this time.
And my name is OJ Egobo, co-host of the King's Domain.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Lloydie, the host of the Chat Up Show on GBKM.
My name is Kenny Bazwai, President and CEO, GBKM FM and TV. We stand with all the community affected by this pandemic.
And of course, welcome back to the You Turned Up Show right here on GBKM FM. If you're just joining us, of course, you haven't missed a whole bunch, but of course, you can always get caught up. Our videos are posted to our platforms after each live broadcast, so you can, of course, just join in, take a look and see where the discussion went, and of course, try to get yourself a little up to date on what is going on. Of course, I'm being joined by my lovely guest for this discussion by the chair for the NDP Black Caucus, Dr. Laura May Lindo, and MPP for Kitchener Centre also, as well as the official opposition's critic for anti-Black racism and all that fun stuff. But of course, before we went for the break, we're talking about changing the status quo. And just before we went, you gave us a snippet. The government needs to have the political will to do it. So that's where we're going to flip the page and go into the intermediary, because that's where the chunk of the actions that we can capitalize on right now lies. And in that section, you did give quite a few, but before we do that though, we skipped over police oversight a bit. You did have a lot to say there. The legislation does have a lot to say there in terms of taking away some of the powers that the SIU has, some of the powers that the OIPRD, and we're talking about the Ontario Civilian Police Commission, as the OCPC, and the Office of the Independent Police Review Directorate. How would we do that?
So part of what we're asking for in the policy paper is to make sure that the oversight is actually independent. That's the easiest way to, what is that you need to call for what the position is standing. When you have systems that have historically harmed people, then we need to have bodies available to be able to assess what's happening and make sure that again. And part of what I think the biggest struggle is that we keep finding videos of Black, brown, Indigenous people encountering violence when they have to interact with police. It keeps happening over and over again. Some of the ways independent bodies history looking at these is that they see isolated, right? And so that's a problem. Because it's not, I have more than one example of this over and over and over. Then that's what we're talking about. There is a problem. It is a pattern of behavior when police murder Black, brown, and Indigenous. We even hear the refrain in the or rationalized that do come when we work closely at a single case. They felt afraid. They were worried. They were worried for, and then that becomes the rationale for why they use one of their weapons or why the violence so quickly. So
According to your policy paper, that is unacceptable, right?
That's right. And that's the reason why we need to have independent bodies that take that link and then require change to happen. And so that's another piece of the problem is that we, at this point, can then compel a police officer to do what the SIU asks, to provide their note, to act here. They have more power. Even in a situation that gets sent to the SIU, they are allowed to decide they're not going to participate. So what kind of oversight actually exists if at the end of the day something goes wrong and we say, well, you decide whether or not to face that. And
so in essence, we're having investigations where the SIU, for example, is carrying out investigations without the accused, let's say the accused then, even offering up a defense or an in-person defense.
I think part of, fully participating. And so I think if we're focused on that all communities, then when something goes wrong, you should want to fully participate to make sure that this you're part of is doing that important work of keeping us safe. There become issues of trust when a situation does go awry. And then when your choice is, well, I don't want notes, or I don't want, we wouldn't accept this in any other. And in fact, if you chose to not participate, that would be held against. That's what happens to everyday people if they go to court.
Yes.
If they choose to show up, then the judge gets to decide what they're going to do. But in this situation, there's like we for a rationale for why they don't want to fully participate. And that part of the problem. And that's where we say, no, we've got a center of Black, Brown, and Indigenous. They need this to happen. They need an oversight over this. And they need to be part of what the creation of what NDP looks like. Right now, community members that won't call one, even in an emergency, they're scared.
Yes.
And yet the fear of when these say, I feared for my life, that fear is more valid and more important than the fear that Black, Brown, and Indigenous people, when they're in a, that's unacceptable.
Absolutely, and I heard you spoke about independent bodies in terms of the SIUs and the OIPRD. All these bodies should be independent, and we're looking at the makeup, right, of the persons who actually sit on these bodies. So what I want you to give, because I'm not seeing a clear stipulation in the policy paper as to what the makeup of that body should be, but what would your recommendation be? Would it be like a 50% police officers, then we distribute the rest among health professionals and other persons with enough expertise to inform decisions? Or like 30-30 or something like that?
It's interesting to bring that up because it's a major part of the question when the conservative government brought in new legislation policing, when they tried to move forward with the liberals' police bill. Everybody that's on that board, on these independent bodies, would have to be trained up. So it doesn't matter whether you're a police officer, you would have to learn those skills, figure out what it is for, especially when a lot of what goes to the SIU is, in at least what we're talking about, is about racism. So everybody would have to understand what racism looks like, what kinds of things you're looking for. So everybody would, if everybody knew, then I don't see 50-50. Individual community that get trained, just like the other people would be trained. I do think it's important to have people who understand what is, like what that is. I do think that it's important to be on some kind of a oversight board but I also think that it's just as important to have unity there, and that there can't be, if having police there, that they have in that discussion, that's a problem,
Yes.
right? Everybody has to understand what's happening and know what they're looking at. Now, that said, community has, for the most part, the trust is so broken.
Yes.
They're done with believing that they can have peace in those incident situations. Historically, they have not looked objectively at the situation or taken seriously what's happening to Indigenous people in those encounters. The focus has been too much on protecting police or rationalizing the behavior, and too little on centering the actual experience of Black Indigenous folks when they. And so I think there's a lot of room to actually grow, and there's a lot of room for us to do something that really would be right.
So let's look at it from this perspective too, because another part of the, I think we ought to look at is that when we hear our white counterparts say that they have never experienced what a Black person has experienced in Canada, there is a level of truth, which for one informs the way they would react to hearing things like defund the police or the police has been doing a bad job. So one would say that in a sample size, let's say a board was only educated to the point where, racism is like this, it exists, it manifests itself through the police, would you say it would be beneficial to have someone who has a different perspective on that board?
I think it's crucial. Just as heads up that something has happened with the sound, I can still sort of hear you, but I think it's crucial that you have people with different lived experiences in any part of the decision-making process within this system. So for instance, the makeup of your SIU might be different because of the role it has to play. The makeup of the board, like a police services board, might be different because of the role it plays. But no matter what you're looking at, you have to make sure that there's people that understand what racism looks like on the ground. And I can say what I hear and what I know from my own experience as a Black woman is that it looks like already being told that you are the criminal. It's part of why we end up having the situations that we have. You call, it's a mental health call, and they come in armed because your mental health crisis appears to them as violence, and so they don't choose de-escalation. They escalate because they're protecting themselves.
Okay.
They're protecting themselves. They're protecting who they say they're protecting community.
And it
But
feeds
for
back
us,
into it feeds back into what you said earlier in terms of there's this fear when we approach a situation and we have to
That's
protect
right.
ourselves. Okay,
That's
wonderful.
right.
But we also went over to overhaul, and we're going into intermediate actions here, which we have already started. Overhaul police oversight for greater levels of accountabilities. We're talking about compelling police officers, force them to cooperate with those measures. So when we say force them to cooperate, what are we talking about? Are we talking about in terms of them being fined, them being possibly being compelled to face jail time or something to that effect?
I think that the idea is there are different grades of what that compelling looks like, whether it's a fine, whether it's some kind of, I don't know if they, well, the argument is if you're in this particular situation, you would already be off, like they would have to take you off of your patrol at that point because they're investigating. Currently, that doesn't happen either. But it could, but most people go to the notion that it would be a fine of some kind, because for any other person, if you chose to not participate in something that was trying to determine what happened, there would be consequences. And right now, there are no consequences. And so if there are no consequences, plus you hold the balance of power, then it stands to reason that you will choose to not participate, or at least only participate in the bare minimum, so that you get the result that you're hoping. And that's part of the problem.
Absolutely. And then
Another,
another,
just to throw it out there, because I think we may have skipped it,
yes.
but it's also dealing with carding. Carding is a matter that on its own,
Yes.
the prime example of what racism looks like in police. And gets described one way and it gets described another way because of its impact by community. And so that's all included in policy paper because we need to find ways to make people feel not surveyed and watched, but protected and supported.
And for Cardin, the proposal that is here for Cardin is for it to completely be stopped, eliminated, and of course, all the data that was collected for it to be disposed of. Let's use that word.
Yes. And the challenge that we find ourselves now is that in the middle of the pandemic, the Solicitor General actually put forward an urgent order that has essentially established carding, where police, because of different physical distancing protocols, can stop somebody and ask them where their name, their address, and there's one that they collect. They ask 3 questions for them. And that action has actually already proven to have a negative impact on racialized folk who work or in jobs, or a lot of our care workers are racialized people. And so now when they've been out driving to work from work, I've received phone calls from people getting pulled over, ask what they're doing. But what's not is the race or ethnicity of the people, so that we don't know that it's impacting Black and people more than our white counterparts. That system, if you're going to elicit information and potentially charge for being out, then I also want collecting the race-based data that's attached to that, so that we can, as racialized people, that this is harming us more. The other problem, though, is in order for the government to go back to political will, are they willing to look at the data and make sure that it doesn't get used, make sure that it's held responsibly, and you can't do that. You're taking serious reality in the process.
Absolutely. And just another quick run through here, because I think we did might have skipped over some. So it's compelling police officers, forcing them to cooperate, put an end to the process of police investigating themselves. That's another one. So an immediate mandating to end anonymity of police officers or under investigations. You've also called for there to be an assurance that chiefs and board suspends officers with or without pay at the recommendation of the SIU. You've also asked for, in the interim, that there should be an independent inquiry into the recent deaths of members of the Black and Indigenous communities, and you've quoted Mr. Chaudhry and, of course, Regis on that. And then finally ending carding, which we stopped on. And then the next piece for that would be investing. So after you've done all that, but let us backpedal here a bit. The unions, we still have the unions to contend with all the overhauling that we're doing here. For one, we know that it won't go over well. How will the government, or how should the government counter the retaliation that will be dealt by the unions?
So my vantage point, part of the challenge and the tension from these unions or these feeling that they are attacked, like that's the language that comes out.
They're being
and
attacked.
experiencing being attacked and asking for change. And I do not want to believe that we all agree that we need to act in these communities. We need to invest in Black and Indigenous, period.
Yeah.
And if we can all agree to that, and we can the police budget with the line item public, we will start to see that there is a discrepancy. I was looking just in Waterloo. Our budget is about $180 million a year. and the budget for the seniors is under 50.
Yes.
Imagine that with a pandemic, right? And we've seen what happened to seniors. And so if we now know real experience of navigating a pandemic, that if you don't invest in certain systems, you're in big trouble when things go awry,
Yes.
then now, and I think that that's the kind of analysis that keeps the focus on its investment background in Indigenous. Who can argue with that?
Absolutely, and this is where also that intergovernment cooperation is needed. Because for one, we're looking at reinvestment and what reinvestment means. The jurisdiction cross because provinces have the bigger portfolios, then the federal would support many of those bigger portfolios, and then the municipalities have the minor bylaws and all that to work. So how will that work in terms of government cooperating to really invest in these communities? The government has a number of programs. I was just reading through their proposal for newcomer resettlement in the northern regions. And one of my drawback from something like that is the rural regions are regions which foster a lot of the less diverse ideologies that we're trying to get rid of in terms of it systematically being in Canada. So what does that cross-government, intergovernment partnership then looks like trying to implement these policies?
So that's an important question. I think part of it is, goes back to first making sure everybody is clear. This is about investing in community. And so if we do that, a lot of the experience are going to disappear because we're often reactive. Like policing is reactive. We're asking to be proactive, right? Now, when I think about the resettlement program, part of the that we have with the federal government is that Ontario, like the provinces, have to invest in the settlement program, and those will be different in different provinces, and they'll be different in different areas. Our government has the political will to make that if they do want to do the programs, that they also integrate some cultural competence training, things like that, to make sure that newcomers in other areas that are not diverse have what they need to be able to thrive. But that to me is the investment. Right?
Yes.
We don't invest more police in areas because now we have racialized people there,
Yes.
which often will have to say there's this many people, right? It's based on population. We need more police. No, we need to make sure that these folks have the language skills that they need, the language support they need, the housing support they need, the job security that they need, and that they're safe. And then we won't need to think about policing in that way. And so the agreement is actually between provinces having certain responsibilities for funding,
Yes.
and for federal government having other responsibilities for funding. And the municipalities are also in the, which is part of why, even if we go back to the beginning of our conference,
Yes.
we were talking about the need for the municipality more control over that police line, so that if they are in affordable housing area or in healthcare support, or you, that they would have control to be able to take that money and put it towards them. Right now they don't. And so part of our call, if it's opposition, is supporting it to make sure that they get the power that they need to be able to control budgets.
Absolutely, and love in terms of, because you have here education, health services, employment, job security, food security, housing, social cohesion, childcare, community. And the last time you were here, I brought it up that take for example in the city of Toronto, $200 million can go a long way in terms of helping to eradicate homelessness. And we look at the criminalization of homelessness in terms of so many homeless persons are taken to jail and not to shelters when they for let's say they want to get them off the street or anything like that, they take them to Holden, right? So it really speaks to the sense of the reallocation of funds that we're trying to hammer out here, how we reallocate those funds. And before we came on, we are speaking about the model that they had developed in Vancouver, which plays with with these policy options and efficient ways to reallocate our budget. And I would recommend the model. Would you?
So I had an opportunity to go deep, do a deep dive on the model that you were sharing.
Yes.
But what I do think is important is for everybody to think about alternative. It's what we would do in any situation. Like if you get a new job, you lose the job. You rethink what the budget is. Because there's a different reality for you. There is a different reality for all of us in Ontario right now.
Yes.
We've had solidarity where people have spoken very clearly about what they need. And we have concrete examples of models across the country that have actually worked to both provide community safety in a way that makes sense and these calls. Even if they have, I was just reading before coming on, they have something called the Bear Clan Patrol.
Yes.
The Bear Clan Patrol community safety. They provide food where people need food. They provide non-violent community supporting Indigenous members operating in a way for their community and also for our. And so the models don't do this. They even have models of mental health response teams, right, that come out that would, what we're asking, that they would have full control over deciding if they had to come,
Yes.
right? So if they feel unsafe for whatever reason, then they might ask to come a little bit later. But first, it's the de-escalation, which is they have those skills. And so if invest in those supports that better address what we're doing and also are proactive or then we take the money from somewhere, so the money around. The other piece that is fascinating, and a lot of people ask me about this.
Yeah.
We know that there's been a lot of these services that have done excellent. They've said that they've been working on increasing their cultural costs or dealing with. We don't know how much their budget has gone to that, nor do we have any kind of accountability measures to tell us what has worked. But if I just videos that keep popping up, it seems like it hasn't been working very well. And so we have to figure out a better way to have them interact with racialized community. I think they want to do that work.
Absolutely, and there are a number of recommendations that you've made in that regards, such as having police officers, let's say, in the indigenous communities who know the culture, who know how to understand and analyze different actions and behaviors within the indigenous communities, persons. So it's more like region-centric policing then.
Yes, and that's extremely important because the focus in these discussions has often been on what's happening in Toronto. I also, in one region, have a police budget here that far outweighs the other investments people are calling for. But in Indigenous services are underfunded because Indigenous communities are underfunded. And so what we do in the policy paper was to argue that you need to cut everything because every community has different needs. And so even what those investments look like will be different. Some communities have a bigger issue with mental health than they do for affordable housing, while other communities need more money invested in affordable housing, others need more invested in education. We have to actually do that work. Part of our mandate when we're, I represent the center. So when I go to Queen's Park, I speak about the regional needs and my riding, which are different. Waterloo, which is right beside me. And so we job as to bring that information to the table so that we can ensure that the reinvestment is making sense
Yes.
for what they need in the community, and that's how you mentor them. That's how you ensure that they have what they need, safe, secure, and held with care.
Absolutely. And in that regards, so two things pops out to people, especially those who don't believe in defunding the police. One, if you take away the funds that the police currently use, we will have probably officers losing their jobs, not being effective. And then there's another aspect to it in terms of the tough on crime aspect will be watered down. So we won't have that tough on crime approach anymore. Is that factual?
So the tough crime approach has also been used against Black, Brown, and Indigenous people to justify the harm that we face at the hands of police, and not just police, but the criminal justice system more generally. And so I actually think we need to move away from this idea of tough crime and more in, oddly enough, just a couple days ago, the police were talking about, there were a number of articles about wanting to decriminalize drug offenses.
Yes.
So some of the drug offenses should be approached with a public health approach, not a punishment approach. And so there's there's an understanding that there are some things that are being policed and that are criminal, that are actually, they're defeating the, they're not being helpful. And so I think the same thing, the rhetoric of crime has been used to say certain people, and everybody has a picture in their head of what they see when they say criminal. They often look like me, they look like you, and that's the problem. What we need to talk about is what safety looks like, what community looks like, and often that being able to see somebody who does have a starting point, who would understand why you're particularly tired when you're driving today because 3-4 jobs that you and that you were doing what you need to do to pay your mortgage, keep the house, the roof over, or to do what you needed when the school to make sure that you could access quality education. Those starting points aren't the same for everybody. And so I think it's really important for us to pay attention to the fact that the system that was developed, and to be honest, the root of policing were to survey slaves, to ensure that people were kept on the land that the colonizer decided was where they should stay. That's the root of it. And so we need to transform that and focus, well, what does safe?
Absolutely. And in regards to the policy, because we are up on the hour, oh my gosh, we're up on the hour. So just some final thoughts here. And while you're doing that, answer the question as to how will this policy be received? Do you think it will be received if implemented? Demilitarizing the police for one, and just how plausible, how soon can we see anything like this even being implemented?
So I would say people may not realize, but many MP offices, mine included, were inundated and continue inundated with emails from residents across the province who were saying they want these. And at the end of the day, my boss are the Ontario. That's who's in charge of what we have in government. And so, as long as the emails keep coming in, we keep getting messages of what they want doing with our power, then it is very hard for this change to come. We're actually a number of places that are taking money out and investing in other areas. So it's not. This isn't. It's about deciding that this is what we want to do. And I would argue, given that we're navigating a pandemic, at a time where we have to make something new, why go back to that was hurting us. We need to go to create a system that will keep Black, Brown, and Indigenous people just as safe as their white.
Absolutely. And Dr. Linda, I want to thank you so much for having joined me on the show today. So much we have discussed, and there's still so much to still remaining in the document, of course, the policy paper. So I'm going to invite each and every person who have tuned in and who knows somebody who's interested in the topic, and because it's quite interesting for us to get ourselves, and I say interesting in the sense that it's interesting because it improves your own understanding of issues, for one. It gets you more informed when you have those discussions, and it also helps you to create better ideas for yourself. So I'm going to invite you to have a read of the full document. It's of course entitled End Police Violence, Invest in Black, Indigenous, and Racialized Lives, on Ontario NDP Commitment to Action. It's only 10 pages, and the 10 pages includes the big, bright, colorful cover page. So you should, so it's 9 pages to read. It's not complex. It's quite simple in terms of the terminologies that are used. But of course, Dr. Linda, thank you so much for having joined me today. And we'll take our very last break here, but we'll be right back to wrap everything on today's show. Don't go anywhere.
As the world fights this coronavirus, we are standing together as a family.
My name is Kemi. I'm a fan of GBKM.
My name is Pastor Clement Omozane.
I'm Medea, your red carpet host.
I am your host, Ellen Roxon, for the show Talk That Talk here on GBKM FM.
I'm a mother and a teacher. I stand with everyone at this time.
And my name is OJ Egobo, co-host of the King's Domain.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Lloydie, the host of the Chat Up Show on GBKM.
My name is Kenny Bazwai, President and CEO, GBKM FM and TV. We stand with all the community affected by this pandemic.
And of course, welcome back to the YOUT TURNT show right here on GBK-FM. Of course, what a discussion that was. We just broke down the NDP's approach to tackling and ending police violence here in our society. We're at a peculiar time in history. We're at a turning point. We're at a point where everything is out in the open, and it's left to the people with power and authority to implement those changes. And of course, the policies have definitely been rolling in. We're just faced with the motion at the Toronto City Council, which of course was voted down 8-16. And now the NDP has their proposal. Within all the proposals that are coming, we are sure that we can reach somewhere, and that's the purpose of the YOUT TURNT show being here discussing issues like these. Because guess what? When we pool ideas, when we pool different perspectives, that's how we create policies that reflect a majority rather than a minority of our population. And on that note, I want to thank Dr. Lindo. She is the MPP for Kitchener Centre, as well as the official opposition's critic on anti-racism, as well as the chair for the NDP's Ontario Black Caucus. Thank you for having joined me. And of course, thank you to my in-studio team. What would the YOUT TURNT show be without the fanciness that you see going on all around me? Of course, thank you to my production team, lighting team, cameras, makeup, so many persons who got involved. And of course, thank you so much to my kind sponsor, AOF Immigration Canada, that specializes in all your immigration needs, ranging from the Quebec Investor Program, permanent residency, student visa, whatever your immigration needs may be, they have you covered. You can give them a phone call. It's 416-629-4617. You can also send them an email. It's at info@aofimmigration.com. And of course, if you're in Canada, you can visit your offices and just let them know that the YOUT TURNT show sent you. And that is 5800 Ambler Drive in Mississauga, Ontario. And as we always like to see on the show, until next time, same time, 3 to 4 p.m., same station, GBKM FM, same host, me, of course, just keep reaching, keep achieving, and keep changing the world. We'll see you next week.
As the world fights this coronavirus, we are standing together as a family.
My name is Kemi. I'm a fan of